Today I'm sewing and sharing a fun and unique asymmetrical skort pattern. This is Simplicity 1370. There are a few views offered for this pattern, including standalone skirt and short pieces, as well as creative mixes of both. I've combined this skort today with the sorbetto top by Seamwork, which is another sew-along on this channel. If you like the look of these two pieces together, check out that sew-along and sew it along with me too. You can find this skort pattern at your local fabric store and online. I've left a link for you below so you can check out all the details, grab a copy, and sew it along with me. Grab that pattern, cut out your fabric, mark your dots and notches, and let's get started. Apply interfacing to one set of front and back yoke pieces. Starting with one of my front pieces, I'm going to prepare my darts. I've transferred the dart from my pattern piece to the top of my front fabric piece. And now I'm ready to pin it in place. Fold your dart in half and pin through one dart leg and out the other. Do this to prepare the darts for both of your front pieces, as well as for the darts at the top of both of your back pieces. Then we're going to take them to our machine and sew from the top edge to the point, leaving thread tails at the end of each dart so that we can tie them in knots. Before I attach my two center front pieces together, I'm going to go ahead and serge the center front curve for both pieces separately. Once I've finished those edges, I'm going to place these front pieces right sides together, and I'm going to clip them together from the top of the material to about 6 inches down. I've marked that 6-inch point with a pin so I remember where to stop my stitching. So I'm going to take this to my machine and sew from the top of the fabric to my pin with a 5/8 inch seam allowance, backstitching at the pin to secure. Now grab your right front wrap piece and note the edge that has a notch. We're going to take this piece to the ironing board and fold the seam allowance of the 3 unnotched edges to the inside by 5/8 of an inch. Once we've pressed those edges onto the wrong side of the fabric, we're going to roll these hems. We're going to take the raw edge of the fabric and fold it to the crease that we created with the iron, and then roll that material on the crease and pin in place all the way around. And then take this piece to your sewing machine and edge stitch close to that inner fold all the way around, pivoting at each corner. And then we're going to hem the 2 unnotched edges of our left front piece in the same way, pressing the unnotched edges to the inside by 5/8 of an inch and rolling the hems and pinning. And then edge stitch in place. Open out your front piece along that seam that we sewed in place so that your material is right side up. Grab your left front wrap piece and place it right sides together with this front piece, matching up all of your dots and notches and pin in place. Now take this to your machine and baste these pieces together along these edges. Once those pieces are attached, grab your right wrap piece so that it is also right side up and match it along the edges just as we did on the left side. And baste in place. I've taken both of my pocket-facing pieces to my serger and I've finished all of the edges separately. I've also used my serger to finish both of the side seams of my front skirt as well. Now I'm going to place each of the pockets right sides together with my front skirt at their side seam and pin in place, matching the notches. Stitch both of these pocket facings to your front skirt with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Now we're going to understitch our pocket facings. Open out these pocket facings so that they're lying flat and so that each facing is lying over its own seam. Then we're going to stitch this pocket to the seam allowance with a 1/8 inch seam allowance from top to bottom. And do this for both pocket facings. Before I attach my side, front, and pocket pieces, I'm also going to serge around the entire piece for both pieces. As I'm serging, as I get to these corners, I just spread the material so that I can get it as straight as possible so the serging stitches can even go right into those corners. Note that on both of your side, front, and pocket pieces, you have large dots indicating where we're going to be pivoting our stitching. And I've transferred these dots onto my fabric with chalk. Now place your side, front, and pocket pieces right sides together with your front, skirt, and pocket facings. Pin in place from the top to the bottom and all around the pockets. And do this on both sides. Take these pieces to the sewing machine and sew as pinned with a 5/8 inch seam allowance all the way around. Sew from the top of the skirt to the first dot, pivoting your stitching, and then continuing to sew all around the pocket with a 5/8 inch seam allowance, curving your stitching here to get to the second dot, then carry on that 5/8 inch seam allowance all the way to the bottom of the skirt. And do this on both sides for both pockets. Now that we've attached these pocket sections, we can flip them to the inside, right along those seams, and then give these seams a really good press. Move your wrap pieces out of your way so you can access your inner leg seams, and place each of your back pieces right sides together with their inner leg seam, and pin in place. Sew your inner leg seams with a 5/8 inch seam allowance and serge your seams to finish. So now we have the front and back connected at these inner leg seams, and while I was at my serger, I went ahead and finished the center back seams so that the serging now meets up nicely with the rest of the serging I did for the front pieces, and I finished the center back seams for both pieces. Now I'm going to place both of my back pieces right sides together, and the front pieces are right sides together as well, and I'm going to clip this center seam together from where my stitching ended for the front pieces all around the curve to the notches in the back pieces. And now we're going to take this to our sewing machine and start our stitching from where the stitching ended on the front pieces, back stitching to secure, and stitching all the way to the notches on the back pieces, again back stitching to secure, using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Once you've sewn that seam, sew it once again, sewing right over the stitches that you've already done, just to reinforce this crotch area. And then open up these pieces and place your front and back pieces right sides together, and pin together your side seams. And do this on both sides. Sew your side seams with a 5/8 inch seam allowance and serge your seams to finish. Place your yoke pieces right sides together, matching your notches, and pin in place. Sew together with a 5/8 inch seam allowance and press your seams open. Do this for both your interfaced and uninterfaced yoke pieces. And then we'll take our interfaced yoke, place it right sides together with the top of your skirt, matching your notches, and pin in place all around the top of the skirt. Once you have your yoke pinned all the way around the top of your skirt, take it to your sewing machine and sew all the way around with a 5/8 inch seam allowance, from center back to center back. Go ahead and trim this seam all the way around by about half. Then take this to your ironing board and press your seams up toward your yoke. I'm also going to take this piece to my serger and serge both short edges of my yoke pieces so that they fall in line with the serged edges of my other center back piece, so that this section is nicely finished for when we insert the zipper. While you're at your serger, go ahead and serge both short ends of your other yoke piece, as well as the entire bottom curved edge of that piece. Now with the yoke that's already attached to our skirt opened out and pressed up, we're going to attach the other yoke piece to it. Place the raw unserged edge of this other yoke piece, right sides together with the attached yoke piece, matching your center fronts, your seams, and your center backs, and pin all the way around. Then we can sew all around the upper edge of our yokes from center back to center back with a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Now that both of our yokes are sewn together, we're going to trim this seam by about half. And then we're going to make clips all along this seam line to the stitching, but not through the stitching, and this will help the yoke facing turn nicely to the inside. Now open out this facing so that it lies flat, and we're going to understitch this yoke facing. We're going to do this in the same way as we did for the pockets earlier, stitching this seam allowance to the yoke facing about 1/8 of an inch away from the original stitching line all the way around our waistband. Once that yoke facing is understitched, go ahead and turn it to the inside of the garment and give this top yoke seam a good press all the way around. Now we're going to pin the yoke facing to the inside of the garment, placing our pins into the groove of the seam that connects the yoke to the skirt piece, making sure that you're catching your facing as you pin. Then we can take this to the sewing machine and stitch in the ditch of that seam where we just pinned, periodically checking underneath to make sure that we are catching that facing as we sew. Now that we have that yoke sewn and finished on the inside, take both of the short ends of your yoke at your center back and baste them in place so that both sides of the yoke stay together for when we insert the zipper. Then we're going to go to the ironing board and press the seam allowances of the center back at 2 different measurements. On the left side of your center back, you're going to fold that serged center back seam to the inside by 5/8 of an inch. And on the right side, you're going to fold that serged edge to the inside by 1/2 of an inch. The pattern calls for a 7-inch long zipper. I'm going to open up my zipper, and with the right side of the zipper facing me, and the right side of my center back facing me as well, I'm going to place the right side of the zipper behind the right center back so that the top of my zipper tape extends beyond that center back by 3/8 of an inch, and pin that in place. And then continuing to pin the zipper all along this right side so that only the teeth of the zipper are exposed beyond that fold at the center right. Now that I have that secured, I can take the tab at the top and fold it to the inside of the garment between the yoke and the seam allowance of the yoke. And then pin that again. Go to your sewing machine and using your zipper foot, you're going to sew from the top of the zipper close to the folded edge all the way down to the opening of the zipper here. Now that the right side of our zipper is sewn in place, take the pressed edge of your left center back and lap it over the right. Because of the varying seam allowances on each side, this left side should overlap the fold on the right side by about 1/8 of an inch. Pin through the material on the left side so that you catch your left zipper tape as you pin. Then we can take this tab of the zipper tape on the left side and tuck it underneath the seam allowance at the top of the yoke, just as we did on the right side, and pin that in place. It may be easier to sew from the inside of the garment, so I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and on the left side of this zipper tape, I'm going to use my zipper foot to sew as close as I can to the zipper teeth on the left side from the top of the garment to the zipper here. Once I've stitched my zipper on that side and I end my stitching parallel to where I ended my stitching on the right side, I'm going to sew horizontally to meet that stitching on the right side and backstitch to secure. Now that we have that zipper fully installed, I'm going to turn my shorts inside out so that I can sew my hook and eyes just above the zipper opening here. Using a needle and thread, I'm going to sew the hook and eye to opposite ends of the center back. Sew it in place to the zipper tape there. Here's what my hook and eye look like attached on the inside. The bottom hem of the shorts is 1 1/4 inches. So I've gone to my ironing board and I folded up that hem 1 1/4 inches. And I've also additionally folded up the raw edge 1/4 of an inch so that I could tuck it underneath that hem for a clean finish. Fold up the bottom of your shorts at the 1 1/4 inch crease, tucking that 1/4 inch underneath, and pin all the way around. Now we can take this to the sewing machine and edge stitch close to that inner fold all the way around. As you're stitching and you approach these wrap pieces, you're going to edge stitch to this seam and backstitch to secure, and then move this wrap piece out of the way and start a fresh set of stitches on the other side of that seam, backstitching to secure and continuing that edge stitching on the inside. And once you've finished hemming those shorts on both sides, you're all done. Thank you for watching this sew along. Make sure you check out my other videos for more great sewing inspiration, and I'll see you in the next video.